So if you fish Lake of the Ozarks with any regularity, before long, you're going to hear the name Bassin' Bob, if you haven't already. Well, today, Bassin' Bob himself is the guest on this show. We're going to learn a little bit more about his story, and we're going to talk about Lake of the Ozarks as a fishery, what it was like back in the day, how it has changed over the years to get to where we are today, and what the future might hold, considering the lake's popularity and the pressure from all of the tournaments that take place down there. Make sure you like and subscribe. This is the Tackle HD podcast. Thanks for being here. Now here's Bassin' Bob. Bassin' Bob Beltman, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate your inviting me.
It's an honor. So I figure a guy with the nickname Bassin' Bob has probably caught some pretty nice bass at Lake of the Ozarks over the years. Tell me real quick what your personal best is and, what some of those most memorable catches for you have been down there.
Yeah, well, don't be too impressed by the name, first of all. I represent the average fisherman because I am the average fisherman. So, but I've caught some good fish. I've been here fishing, 200 to 300 days a year for 10 years, and my personal best is just under 7 pounds, or just under 8 pounds. It was a 796, and I've caught probably about 10 7-pounders. Most of those 7-pounders were caught on spinner baits in the springtime, and caught a couple on the shaky head and one or two on a topwater bait as well. Most of the 7-pounders I've caught also, well, I've caught some in varying areas. Probably 4 to 5 of them were caught up in the river area of the lake, from the 60-mile marker to the 80-mile marker.
Well, Bob, your fishing website is really all about fishing intel. Does that kind of coincide with what you've learned over the last few years, that the big fish seem to be hanging out between the 60 and 80-mile marker?
It definitely does. The river part of the lake seems to warm up a little bit quicker in the springtime, and those fish are, because the river area is a little bit shallower than the rest of the lake. The fish become a little bit more accessible to catch, and they'll move up and spawn a little quicker. They'll start into a pre-spawn a little bit quicker, just because the water, starts to warm up a little bit. The water up there also in the springtime can be dirty, and that's not to be worried about. The fish have one thing on their mind that time of the year, and that's to get into some areas to spawn, and they're used to that dirty water, and so they'll still bite and they'll still feed, and even that dirtier, warmer water will also put them a little bit more into a position to be shallow, close to the bank. Typically using, great big spinner baits, or a spinner bait that's got great big Colorado blade on it, puts off enough flash, and they're ready to eat and they're ready to spawn. So it definitely is consistent with what I've learned since I've been here. I've been very fortunate. I mentioned earlier that I represent the average fisherman because I am the average fisherman, and yes, I've gotten better over the course of 10 years, which you'd hope that I would, but I've had the great benefit of fishing based on my Bassin' Bob platform. I knew when I moved here from St. Louis, and I started a website called Bassin' Bob, people are going to be like, who's this guy from St. Louis that's going to tell us all about bass fishing, right? And so I knew immediately I was going to have to surround myself, with some good pro staff, or, I call them my experts. So I surrounded myself when I first moved for credibility. So when I first moved here, I was already friends with Jack Uxa, so he's part of my expert staff. Wayne Fitzpatrick, the founder of Fitz Fishing, excellent angler, fished this lake for 40 years, and James Dill, who used to own Crackle Gator Bait Company, and a tournament fisherman. So those guys really helped me along when I first got started, helped bring credibility to to the website. I did a lot of videos with them. They would take me fishing and show me stuff. And then that combined with just being on the water a lot has, helped me to, learn the seasonal patterns. Wayne is the one who just loved fishing in the river area. So I was fortunate enough to have Wayne fish with me for a few years, as my fishing partner in Anglers in Action tournaments. And that during that time of year, we would run to the river every time. Wayne would say, "Bob, gas her up. We're making a run." And, we did, and we'd run to the river. And he just taught me so much about fishing the river area. We caught a lot of fish, a lot of big fish. Jack, he taught before I moved to Lake of the Ozarks and lived in St. Louis. I actually had a condo here at Lake of the Ozarks that I leased, and so I would come to the lake. I had a boat here, and but I would come to the lake as often as I could to fish. And every season of the year for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, I would hire Jack as a guide to show me the seasonal patterns, the different types of baits, what I should be looking for, that type of thing. And so that was a lot of, really good foundational knowledge. Then as I fished more and was fortunate enough to hang around these guys, I started really understanding these seasonal patterns and, the movement of the fish during different times of the year. And to some degree, once you figure that out on Lake of the Ozarks, it's really not that hard. I mean, when I say that, it's not as though the fish are going to be biting all the time or it's going to be absolutely perfect. But once you kind of know what to do, where to do it, based on the time of the year, what the movement of the fish are, what the movement of the bait fish are, you can really put together the right patterns. And I owe that knowledge to those guys, also guys like Marcus Sikora and Dion Hibden. I mean, gosh, there's so many of them that have helped me over the Mark Weesey, that have helped me over the course of the years to improve my fishing. And of course, then I try and pass that along through the website. And the reason I started the website was when I retired from owning some software companies in St. Louis and planned to move to the lake full time, kind of a serial entrepreneur. So I thought, well, I'm going to do something. And so I actually wrote a few different business plans, some of them kind of crazy. You'll get a kick out of this is, as I was fishing all the time, I was seeing all these big houses with all this glass. And it was like, man, there is not a glass cleaning company at Lake of the Ozarks. And I thought, man, let's start a glass cleaning company, But then I got a little nervous about having to hire people, staff people, and as I started to write that business plan, it kind of felt like a real job. I thought, nah, I don't think I want to do that. Lots of liability as well.
Sure.
So I wrote the business plan on fishing, and primarily because for those times that I lived at Lake of the Ozarks, or leased a place at Lake of the Ozarks, but still lived in St. Louis, when I would come to the lake, I was always online trying to find fishing reports or find anything to give me a clue. And yes, there was a little bit of information on the internet. I don't think Facebook was there, but I don't think everybody was really leveraging Facebook so much at that time, 10 years ago, for putting fishing information on the website, on Facebook. There's a lot more of that now today. But I just couldn't really find information. And if I did, it was, 3 weeks old, or just, usually it was outdated and not very consistent. So I thought, well, heck, I'm going to fish all the time. I might as well do this. And so had a company in St. Louis, create the website. The website includes my fishing reports, I have a guy here that writes weekly fishing reports. My expert group and I, we do, we used to do them every month, but now we do them about every 2 months. We do an expert roundtable video where we just talk about what the fishing patterns are going to be in the upcoming months. Um, so we have those kind of videos, tournament results. So I try and get as many tournament results as I can and try to go to as many of the tournament weigh-ins. A lot of tournaments I'm fishing, so I'm right there at the weigh-in where I can interview, the guys that won. Most of them are very transparent with, what part of the lake they fished, what type of baits they were fishing with. I suggest to them if they want to, be generic with their answers, like someone says the dam area. Well, that's a pretty big area. Somebody says a jig, that could be a creature bait, that could be some kind of bottom bait. I never give up specific spots, even when I'm fishing and I'm taking pictures of my fish or I'm fishing with somebody else. Very careful as to what's in the background so that you're not giving up specific spots. That gets people a little upset. So, anyway, off and running we were, and, getting started, I'm kind of a marketeer. I'm a marketing kind of guy. I was marketing, business development, sales, and all that, with my business partner being the technical guy in the software companies that we owned. So, dude, I tried so many crazy things to get the word out because the main thing is get the word out. I bought billboard signs along Highway 70 from Kansas City to the lake, and from St. Louis to here. The first year of the Big Bass Bash, I hired an airplane to fly a big old banner over the top of the lake and all that kind of stuff. And eventually, that some of that worked, some of it, probably pretty much nonsense, but just getting started. But really, what has really helped me from a branding perspective, I think more than anything, in addition to putting very honest reports on the website. I mean, if I don't catch them, that's what goes on the fishing report.
Yeah.
It's still a fishing report, right? It's still water temperature. I fished deep. I fished shallow. They weren't biting. I was fishing with this bait, that bait. Thing biting, they biting. That's so. Having honest fishing reports, having consistent fishing reports, having fishing reports that are from me, even though I'll get some fishing reports from some other people. But for the most part, the fishing reports are my personal experience on the water versus somebody else's, which I think the anglers like that a lot better. And also, do you fish tournaments, Joe?
No.
Okay. So at a lot of the tournaments, especially the larger tournaments, and I started this early on when I first got started, I would go set up a table with coffee and donuts at takeoff. And I would set up a table with hot dogs and chips and waters at the weigh-ins. Eventually, I got a big tent and all that type of thing. And so I became very recognizable to the fishermen, and they would always want me to be there eating some donuts and coffee, and I got, a chance to shake their hands and meet them. And, they'd always ask me, well, how much do I owe you? And I said, you don't owe me anything. And I'd always say, but, there's nothing free but the cheese and the mousetrap. So all I ask you to do is, go to the website, check it out. If you like it, become a member. And that's all the thanks that I ask from you guys. So it's worked out. It's worked out very well. We have about a total of 18,000 members following it. Not all of them are paying members. I have a lot of free content, and then I have content behind the paywall. And so that's and then from a revenue standpoint, I also make revenue through advertising. Just as I asked you earlier when we first got started, who would be the person to talk to at Tackle HD about advertising.
For sure, because along with the website, you also have a magazine, and I've been in fishing shops up here in St. Louis. I was at Dunn's, I don't know, this was probably 2 months ago, and a guy behind the counter said, "Hey, take this. And it was your magazine.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, obviously we started doing a lot more videos than articles, but early on we were writing a lot of articles. And I got to thinking, how do I repurpose this content? I have this content. How do I repurpose it?
Yeah.
And so that's where I got the idea of doing the Fishing News magazine, another revenue stream for advertising as well. Turns out we're doing very little repurposing and doing a whole lot of, fresh writing. But that's okay. Everything needs to be fresh. So I appreciate that. We do the Fishing News magazine twice a year.
Okay.
We always have it come out before the Big Bass Bash. The anglers in action that run the Big Bass Bash, they insert the magazine in all of their bags, which is about 3,000. And then, as you mentioned, the magazines are at all the bait and tackle stores and Hy-Vee and Walmart and Deerbergs and some of those high traffic type of places as well. So that's worked out well too. That's a lot of work, but it's worked out well. Then I kind of progressing with the story, and if I'm off track from where you want to go with this, I'm just kind of relaying the story. So as I've got to the point where I wouldn't say that I've saturated this marketplace, but I think I've created as much brand as I possibly can for the bassandbob.com website. And it's just, if I can add 3 or 4 new members a month or every other month or whatever, that's great. But it's just hard to just continue to, I'll invest in content for sure, but really trying to do something to add a lot more members is pretty difficult right now. It's just difficult. But so I thought, how can I expand this business? How can I expand this business plan? And so I started another business. So I would have guys coming from other lakes from around the country, fishing Lake of the Ozarks in a tournament or something, or even just fun fishing. And they would tell me, "Well, we found your website. We wish we had something like that on our lake." So I got to, scratching my entrepreneurial head and thinking, how can I take advantage of this opportunity? So I started another company called Fish Intel. And the summary of that business plan is that Fish Intel is the Bass and Bob platform is a complete turnkey platform, right? I mean, it's got everything already built. So for a fishing website for a particular lake. So I hooked up with Eric Prey, Table Rock, and asked him if he would be my beta, kind of my test lake. I worked out a deal with him. We basically flushed all the content out of Bass and Bob, rebranded the website the way with the name and whatever he wanted, color scheme and so forth for Table Rock. And he went live a couple of years ago with TableRockFishingIntel.com. And it's basically the exact same website as Bass and Bob. You just got to put the content in. And so now I'm licensing that platform, the Fish Intel platform, to individuals or entities around the country at other lakes. And excuse me, I think we're up to about 14 lakes right now. So it's kind of like fishing. It's not like they're just jumping in the boat, but I have a business development guy that's helping me. He's basically scouring every major lake, trying to find the right person. I've got some of my pro staff guys that fish around the country, guys like Dion, Andy Newcomb, Casey Scanlon. They know guys at other lakes that they will send us their information and we can contact them and, see if that person would be interested or know somebody at the lake. So it's we're just kind of pushing the rock uphill just a little bit on it, but it's working out. Like I said, we're up to about 14 lakes now, and they're
That's
all
great.
doing well, and they're all being successful.
So that's really cool. And if anybody watching is potentially one of those people at a different lake, they can reach out to you. Your
Yeah.
email is bob@bassingbob.com, bob@bassingbob.com. They can reach
Yeah.
out to you and, get as much more information as you could give them. So Bob, I wanted to kind of talk about fishing Lake of the Ozarks, kind of what it used to be, what it's like now, kind of how it got there, and where we're headed in the future. There's a lot of tournament pressure. There's a lot of recreational fishing pressure there. I know you've been full time there for 10 years, but were you fishing the Ozarks like long before you moved down there, like
No,
back in the 70s and 80s, or no?
no, I really wasn't, Joe. It's interesting because I'll talk to some of these guys that have fished it for a long time, and they'll be talking to me like, "Oh, you remember this tournament or this guy or that guy?" It's like, guys, man, I wasn't here then.
You're a St. Louis guy like me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would say in the probably in the 90s, I fished a few charity tournaments, and that was pretty much about it. I didn't know really much about tournament fishing. I didn't know much about the lake. From what I've heard from some others, that at one point, at some point in the past, there was grass in the lake, and that's all since died off. There's a lot of differences between Lake of the Ozarks and some of the other Missouri lakes. When they built the dam here in I think they started it in 1928. I think it was completed in 1931, and it was kind of funded by the federal government, and of course as well as Ameren, or at that time Union Electric, to generate electricity. It was also the time of the Depression, and so they put a lot of workers to work, and they basically cleared all the timber out from this lake. So we don't have standing trees now. There are certain areas of the lake that, with your sonar, you can still see some standing timber. Down there it's usually pretty deep. So we have a little bit more of a unique lake in that, versus some of the other lakes that have standing timber, or maybe have grass. At this point, we don't have any of that. So we have pretty much of a rocky base in the bottom, and so the fishing basically use those rocks, and understanding kind of how the fish relate to rocks, whether they're big boulders during a certain time of the year, or pea gravel during certain times of the year, or chunk rock back, that type of thing, becomes very important. And that, since I've been coming here, Joe, for the last 15 years, I'll call it, so on more of a regular basis, none of that has really changed.
Okay.
I think the fishery is extremely healthy. Part of the reason, when I say healthy, I've seen 2 10-pounders on this lake. I've seen, at a tournament weigh-in, I saw a couple 9-pounders. Not very many. Seen some 8-pounders, some 7s, but we have, from a tournament perspective or a quality of fish perspective, we have a lot of 3, 4, and 5-pounders in this lake, and that seems to be growing every year. It seems like we're seeing more and more 5-pounders and more 6-pounders. A lot of that has to do with the how good spawns have been in previous years, and the fish, and then those fish hatch, and create a class, like a year class. And we've had a lot of good spawns and a lot of good year classes, and those fish just, they just keep getting bigger. I don't think we're ever going to be, because of the nature of our lake and the temperature of our lake in the wintertime. I don't think we'll ever be the type of structure. I don't think Lake of the Ozarks will ever be a consistent, 9 and 10 pound type of bass lake.
Is the heavy pressure that the Ozarks gets from tournaments taking place down there, hundreds of them a year, gonna hurt this place as a fishery in the long run, or is it already?
Yeah, there's a lot of tournaments. In fact, right now I'm sitting here getting ready to prepare my team for coffee and donuts and hot dogs and all that. These are the regatta reports from the state of Missouri. Every year, except for COVID year, we have an average of about 500 tournaments per year on the lake. So it does create a lot of fishing pressure. However, we have a very expansive lake, so it's easy. It's actually pretty easy for big tournament fields to spread out. We have 90 miles of shoreline from Bagnell Dam to Truman Dam. I'm sorry, we have 90 miles. We have over 1,000 miles of shoreline. So fishing pressure, definitely certain times of the year, maybe in the springtime. It's just the fish are shallow, so they're a little bit easier. They're a little bit easier to catch. So, I can't really say that the fishing pressure, in my opinion, has really, hurt the lake at all. I think, what we have to be careful about is making sure, especially like this time of the year when it's warm, that the anglers are taking care of their fish, because the fishing pressure, I don't think, is going to hurt so much in terms of fish actually biting or getting bites, but it's if the fish are not taken care of, it's the mortality of the fish when they're traveling from someplace on the lake back to PB2, which is where most of the tournaments are at in the state park. Taking care of those fish with ice, and there's certain chemicals you can put in the water to keep them lively. Release them back to the lake as soon as possible. If they're caught really deep, you can fizz them, put like a needle down their throat and relieve the air bladder. So taking care of the fish is probably, as it relates to the number of tournaments, taking care of the fish and having them, released properly and taken care of properly in the live well is probably the best thing that we all can do to preserve the health of the fishery. There's some anglers that, complain a little bit. There's really not much you can do about this. If you're going to have tournaments, a lot of fish are caught in the dam at the Gravois or up the river. And then, you have a weigh-in, somewhere in the mid, oftentimes right at PB2. So those fish are being displaced from those areas. And, I've heard comments from, very credible anglers that say that, the Gravois is just not fishing as good as it used to, or the river area is just not fishing as good as it used to. And they attribute that back to those fish being caught in those areas being displaced in tournaments. Really not too much you can do about that. I think Major League Fishing, Bass Pro Tour, they've figured out a good plan for that. Weigh the fish in the boat right away and then release it. Very challenging to do. Without just a lot of money, because they have boat officials and all that type of thing. The kayak guys have figured out a really good program for preserving fish. They're fishing in a kayak right there in the boat. They have an official type of measuring stick, a ruler, and they do the ruler deal. They have to take a snapshot of it. They have other official tags and stuff in terms of what time of day it is, time stamp and date stamp and all that. And then they have a web-based application that information gets uploaded to, and then they release the fish right there. Now, they have indicated to me that there have been some guys that, try and pull a fast one, try and put another tail behind another tail, whatever. Those guys are going to get, they'll get figured out, but they have figured out a pretty good way of doing it, and that's, while I doubt that would be something that regular, big motor bass tournaments would want to do, it certainly is something that can resolve that. The other thing that helps this fishery, and this is something that Dion Hibden has always mentioned. We anglers at times, because we have a very large and popular recreational lake with a lot of big boats that creates a lot of boat traffic, or a lot of big boats that creates lots of big waves. It's really difficult during that time of the year for us fishermen to get out there on the main lake, or we're almost pretty much isolated to maybe some no-wake coves or something like that to fish. But as Dion said, that's really healthy for our fishery, because during that period of time, during the summertime period, the fishing pressure is a lot lower. And if you follow the progression of the fish, in the springtime they spawn, then about May to June, they start trying to get healthy again. They get on main lake points. We usually have a lot of current in the water during that time of the year from spring rains, and that draws the fish out to the main lake points. But then as that boat traffic starts picking up, and those fish are just recovering right from the spawn. So as that boat traffic picks up, the fishing pressure goes way, way down. Maybe have some morning fishing or some evening fishing, but you just don't have the amount of fishing pressure that we have here during the fall and during the spring. And so
that boat traffic, that recreational boat traffic, is creating a bit of a safe haven for those fish, in a place where they can get away from the fishermen for a while.
yeah, exactly. And those fish are so used to that boat traffic, it's not disturbing them whatsoever. But it reduces, as you've said, it reduces the fishing pressure, big time. And the fish have plenty of places to go hide. They get in the shade under docks, get in some brush piles, whatever. But the bottom line is, as you mentioned, they're not being as disturbed by anglers trying to catch them. And they're, like I said, they're kind of healing up. They're kind of healing up from the spawn and whatever trauma they might have from a post-spawn perspective. And so it really helps. It helps the fishery. There's maybe only a couple of daytime tournaments during the summertime here. There's several nighttime tournaments, but just not as so many anglers that are going to really disrupt or create too much fishing pressure on the fish. So that's a benefit that we have here. The other thing that really helps the fish, this is from conversations I've had in the past with the Missouri Department of Conservation fisheries biologists, is at Lake of the Ozarks, when they built Bagnell Dam, the dam is only so high. I think we have a six foot tolerance before we have flooding. And so even though when you come to Lake of the Ozarks in the winter, they do a drawdown. They do a drawdown to prepare for spring rains. They'll draw the lake down about 6 feet, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this lake is so low, so low." But it never goes below that 6 feet drawdown, and it never comes up any higher than 660. And that's when there started to become then a lot of now there was more of an issue with flooding before they built Truman Dam, and there started to be some building around the lake in the 50s, and the flooding was actually causing a problem. So one of the things that they did, I'm not sure this is 100% the whole reason, but they built Truman Dam, and Truman Dam has like a tolerance of 20 plus feet, and they hold water back in the springtime at Truman so that the spring rains don't flood like at the Ozarks, and that's created the opportunity for more businesses and homes and nice docks and all that to be built very close to the water here at Lake of the Ozarks without any concern for flooding. So kind of threading all that together, Joe, is because the water doesn't fluctuate that much throughout the entire year, the fish have a very stable environment versus, like I said, Truman and Table Rock. They both have very wide fluctuations where they'll have flooding. The fish will, get in the grass, and then it'll get really low, and it's just not as stable of a fishing habitat for fish as we have at Lake of the Ozarks. That's just another little tidbit about our lake and as it relates to the quality of our lake and the quality of our fish and the consistency of a healthy fish population at Lake of the Ozarks.
Well, Bob, this has been awesome. I now can see why they call you the Ozarks Fishing Ambassador, full of awesome information. And of course, what you do is you share this information through your website, bassingbob.com. The topic, talking about the tournament fishing pressure and how to properly take care of these fish to help out with those mortality rates. Have you put out content on the site specifically on that topic?
We sure do. Yeah, we have information out there. We have videos out there as well. So yeah, we definitely put that information out there, and we encourage that. We encourage that also to make sure fish are taken care of.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know you said you were out fishing just this past weekend, so we're recording this end of August. What's working for you right now? What are you throwing? What are you catching them on?
Great question. So first of all, when I go fishing, and I'm not fishing in a tournament, I try and do a lot of different things for the anglers, so that I'm not just doing the same thing every day. So I'll go out on a point and throw a great big crankbait or a great big jig. Then I'll go fish some brush piles and just see how that's all going. And then, so I try and fish different patterns and different baits when I'm fishing, just to either clue myself in or, try and give my members something to think about in terms of what's working and what's not working. Because I can't say what's not working if I don't try it and find out it's not working.
Sure.
So what was working for me this weekend is I started fishing the fish this time of year because of the high sun we have. They like to get tucked up underneath docks, and believe it or not, we have fish. We have fish that are shallow year round, and we have fish that are deep year round. It's not as though, now some fish will move, but it's not as though the main lake fish going to go all the way to the back of the cove, and the back of the cove fish are not going to just, swim all the way out to the main lake. So, they have their homes, and a lot of times this time of year, those homes are around docks because they have shade. They have plenty of forage, bait fish and bluegill and such. So, and then some of the bluegill and the big gizzard shad are starting to get up on these big rocks. They get up there and they eat on the algae and stuff on the rocks. They'll go up there and spawn, that type of thing. So yeah, this weekend what I found is I started fishing behind condo docks and yacht club docks, marina docks, behind the cables, into the shade underneath the walkways. And that type of pattern, and caught several fish. I think I was out there for a few hours. Didn't catch a bunch. I think maybe caught 10. Only caught one keeper, about a 3-pounder. and I was catching those on a chomper's jig.
Okay. So if you don't already have them in your arsenal, you got to get some of these bad boys, and that's the
Yeah,
Tackle HD Helper mites, the Ned mites if you like to throw the Ned
yeah,
rig, and then we've got the of course our signature bait, the high def craw.
yeah.
These shippers you see behind me, these displays are now in over 100 Walmart locations.
Really?
You can find them, yeah, you can find them kind of mid Missouri on down, Ozarks area on down through Arkansas. So for anybody watching, keep an eye out for these next time you hit the fishing aisle in a Walmart. And of course, these baits are available all over the place.
Yeah.
I took a couple of kids fishing over the weekend. We fish ponds around St. Louis, Southern
Yeah.
Illinois, and we were in Waterloo, Illinois, a place that I fish quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I had two 9-year-old boys with me, and they tore it up on this thing right here. They caught this is the Tackle HD Sticks worm. It's the June bug color. It's like a purple with like a kind of a bluish teal flake to it. And that's what they were catching everything on. So that
Yeah.
color, at least up in St. Louis right now, is hot.
Yeah. Yeah, I've used the Tackle HD. I've used it quite often as a trailer on my jigs.
Sure.
And then, Jack, of course, he swears by the Tackle HD products,
Yeah.
and he has showed me some things with your products for just putting it on a regular head. Nothing super fancy, but it does catch fish.
Absolutely.
I was out fishing last year with Aaron Click, and he was fishing with one of those baits, and he was just tearing them up behind me in the boat. So they definitely work, and I know they have them here at Fitz Fishing here at Lake of the Ozarks as well. And
For
they're
sure.
good.
And speaking of Fitz, your son is one of the managers over there.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he runs the one the one by PB2, and
Okay.
I know there's lots of guys that absolutely swear by the Tackle HD baits. You guys make a great bait. Very popular here on Lake of the Ozarks.
Well, Bob Beltman, this has been an honor to speak with you, one of the legends down at Lake of the Ozarks. And here, I didn't know that you were a St. Louis guy, so that's cool.
Go Cardinals.
Go Cardinals. All right, guys. So check out Bob and the intel that he's putting out, bassingbob.com. And if you ever see Bob out on the water, make sure you say hello. So, Bob, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate it. You guys take care.